What is up, everybody? Happy Sunday. I hope everyone has had a fantastic weekend. Before we jump into it, quick mic check, video check, everything coming through loud and clear. I hope so. Waiting for the chat. To give me a thumbs up here before we really dive in. Okay, I got thumbs up from everybody. Okay. So, how was everyone's week? I actually had a very, very, very quiet week. A little bit still, running off sleep deprivation, being a new dad, trying to figure everything out, trying to balance trading with, still assisting my significant other with our newborn. And I was also in Topstep Live account jail. If you didn't know, my live account has been moving over from Rhythmic to Topstep X, and I was dealing with that transition for about a week. Kind of got screwed up with the Thanksgiving holiday. I think it slowed down the brokerage transitions from closing the account and getting a new one open. But we are live. We are back. I am going to be focusing on my live account this week specifically, but I did have a couple trades. Actually ended my hot streak. Took a red day on Friday. Took a setup just short a little early before the initial dump as ES was consolidating, and actually did some pretty dumb math. You guys know me. I like to focus on some of the options level, some of the gamma data to kind of guide some of my ES trades, and I calculated the spread looking at the charts and looking at the number difference between ES and SPX, and put my stop at a place about a point lower than it should have been, and the wall at 6100 SPX basically held at 6110, 6111 I think was the top tick of Friday, and I had my stop sitting at 6110.50 because I can't do math. So that was unfortunate. Took a red day and ended my little 10-day winning streak in my live account. But we come back stronger. No big deal. Had a nice little almost $20,000 green streak there between all of those days. So no big deal. We come back. I also took about a $10,000 payout out of my live account as well, just to kind of pay myself. But how was everyone else's week? How did everyone else do? I was active in the markets a little bit, but was not sitting at screens all day. Kind of my new philosophy, more or less, is to spend less time staring at screens, staring at charts, even when I'm not actively trading. But I'm curious for all of you. How did everyone do? Were we green? Were we red? Did we struggle? It was a pretty lackluster week outside of making, I think 4 all-time highs last week. But outside of that, it was pretty boring. The range was tight. It was pretty uneventful. We didn't move a whole lot. You may have caught maybe 1 or 2 ES moves every single day. It was pretty much, come on. When ES is trading in a 10-point range and that 10-point move happens once in the session, and it's usually shortly after the open or after consolidation before the euro close, maybe you get a little move. But we haven't been able to really drift too high out of the range. The total range of last week was like 60 points, plus or minus. I think maybe a little less than that. And I don't think that's necessarily going to change this week. We do have CPI and PPI, but I don't know if those are going to be the firework explosion that we have seen in months past at times to kind of really drive us out of this monotonous kind of slow grind to the upside that we continue to be in, and we make new all-time highs. So I'm not putting my hat in the ring of a, wild, fantastic, great trading week. We'll see what happens. I'm seeing the options data. I'm seeing everything else. I just don't think the implied move is that big, and without some kind of catalyst, I just don't see us doing much else rather than balancing and maybe drifting a little bit higher, making a new all-time high. We'll have to see. But that being said, one other little hiccup we have tonight, we'll see as we open here and data gets provisioned. One of the other things with switching to TopstepX, I didn't have data for COMEX and the whatever CL's under, I guess New York MEX. So I had to basically buy those for my live account on TopstepX. So we don't have data currently for GC and CL. So I did take two screenshots of my TradingView charts for those two on the 1 hour so that we can actively look at those two as well. We'll see if it actually refreshes here when we open here in about 9 minutes. But if it doesn't, no worries. I came prepared a couple minutes ago, took some screenshots, have them ready to go so we can at least talk through what that looks like. And hopefully my data will be up and running sometime tomorrow. But if not, I also have a combine that I just loaded up to. So when that gets provisioned, I could also just flip to a combine account so that we can actively see the data and talk through it in TopstepX specifically. But we'll see how that happens here in a few minutes. So we'll start with ES. But I know everyone's kind of been trickling in. So thank you. If you haven't seen my Sunday show, we don't take trades, unfortunately. If you came here to potentially find a trade or look for a good opportunity, that's not what you're going to get from me. On your Sunday evening, you're going to get a good deep dive into the previous week's volume profile and where we may go this week. We will talk about the big four, ES, NQ, CL, and GC, as well as what is on the data dump docket this week as far as news releases, data releases in the pre-market and throughout the trading sessions, as well as earnings reports that are coming out this week and some options data on the gamma front that we will take a peek at. So this is not a trading show specifically. You can tune into Coach Dakota after me shortly in about 2 hours or so. And if you're looking for some overnight trades, that's the man to look for. He is way better at Globex trading than I am. But if you have questions as we are going through some of this prep for the week, feel free to throw them in the chat. We will grab them. I will get to them towards the end of tonight's session. But pretty much anything I'm an open book. Anything you want to talk to me about, ask questions about, my trading, my strategies, things I use, just overall perspective to. Happy to give it. Just, I'm not always the best person to ask for certain things, but I will answer everything and anything to the best of my abilities. So I think everyone's trickled in now, so let's dive in a little bit deeper into ES. Looking at last week's volume, as we said, a bit of a snooze fest, but we did make a bunch of new all-time highs throughout the week. So with that being said, I don't think anything has really changed as far as that plan. If you guys remember last Sunday, I was looking to potentially buy back towards the 6,000s. I think 60.15 to 60.20 was my weekly pivot in the previous week. We never even got a chance to buy it there. I think I said the first place that you could potentially buy it was going to be in the 60.30s, 60.40s, and you got that sell off into Monday, and then we just were off to the races from there. So looking at the volume profile from last week, you kind of have a double distribution here. We had some consolidation in the early parts of the week, tried to come back down, failed kind of in that 50s to 40s spot. And then we just slowly, monotonously just kept grinding higher without any sort of pullback, anything to really get in on. You had to close your eyes and buy the all-time high. And I think we made the joke last Sunday of that may be the play. And Nick may have egg on his face because I just suck at doing it. But if you have been okay about buying the all-time high with just closing your eyes and doing it, you've been right about 57 times at least this year on, successfully finding a top and then continuing to make a new top, or not even a top, a new high. So the same is going to be true this week. I would not be shocked if we came back down and retested where I had my weekly pivot for this week, somewhere between the 60s, 55s, maybe even all the way down to like 45s in this low volume edge and this higher time frame, whatever it's called, high volume node. Or value area high, excuse me, value area high from the last few weeks as well. If we were to get any sort of weakness to kick off the week or throughout the week, that's probably the secondary place you may find buyers would be to kind of go back down here and retest. So my pivot's going to be at last week's value area low, basically this high volume edge here, and basically the bottom edge of this consolidation that we were in the early parts of last week. I could see buyers continuing to step in there, rebid, and maybe go make a new all-time high, make that run. Like I said, we do have CPI on Tuesday, so it could be a pretty sluggish day going into tomorrow. Sometimes you do get some wild moves. You might get a couple of them leading into or in the latter half of tomorrow's session. The day before CPI is always a little weird. I always make the joke that someone leaked it type of thing, where you just see a couple, rotations that are relatively large given the potential range. And I always make the joke, oh, someone leaked CPI, because we're finally moving, and we're moving, moving the day before, obviously, the data release. But I don't expect too much. I don't remember off the top of my head what the implied kind of, SPY and SPX options move is for the week, but I don't think it's very big. I think we are still stuck in kind of that slow drifts, monotonous, Santa Claus type rally where we may just drift a little higher without any sort of catalyst. That catalyst obviously could be, any sort of inflation data not being great coming out of November, but I don't necessarily think the market really cares anymore. So even if you got a weird print, the market seems to shake it off anyway. So I'd be naturally looking to find some place to buy this. Like I said, in those mid 6,000, 6,050, 6,060s. If you were to get a sell, I would expect 6,000 to be defended, pretty aggressively personally. And we'll talk about why with some of the options data. I just don't see without something big really pushing us down an elevator shaft that will drift much further than, 70, 80, God forbid 100 points back down to the big option strike being SPX 6,000. But is it roll week? I can't remember if roll week's this week or next week, but the logic would be that spread is getting smaller. So the SPX 6,000 is probably almost down here going to be this week, somewhere between maybe 610, 605s. I think it is getting tighter and tighter. I don't remember what the spread was at the close of Friday, but we'll figure that out tomorrow. But for the time being, like I said, my pivot's going to be down here towards 60-50s, 60-60s, and that is last week's value area low. So that would be your possible initial place to buy this if we're not just going to do what we did last week, which is just buy the all-time high, close your eyes, and just, hold it all week, and it's going to continue to move higher. And when you look at the last 3 weeks even, this is just continuing to, one time frame higher, make a move higher each week. So we don't even come down and retest points of control anymore. We just continue to kind of drift higher. So the same thing could be true. God knows we could come back down into the 60, 80s, 60, 70s and rebid there as well, and just be off to the races and go break through 6,100 again and continue to move higher. I'm seeing a lot of insanely bearish things on Twitter and some insanely bullish. So most likely what we're going to do is just chop and consolidate this week. That would make perfect sense, because when Twitter gets super bearish and everyone else is, calling Bitcoin 200,000 at some point next year and all this other stuff, I'm like, we're probably just going to chop and consolidate. That seems to be what always seems to happen when everyone gets very outlandish one way or the other. So no strong edge. Like I said, I'm looking to just potentially find a decent spot in the mid sixes to rebid this for a trip higher. We are about to open here in about 45 seconds. So we'll take a peek at that too before we jump over to NQ. As I said earlier, if you have questions or anything you want me to dive a little deeper on, feel free to throw them in the chat. Sorry, my brain turned off there. I am running off minimal sleep at times this week. Last night was one of those nights where I didn't get the best sleep with the newborn. So every day is like a crapshoot. I'm sure anyone that has young kids or has had, you know, a baby here and there knows you think you're reaching a new stretch of kind of moving towards that next milestone where they're going to sleep a few extra hours or whatever it is. And then the next day they're right back to, you know, trying to cluster feed or whatever it is. So it's a lot of fun. So we are opening up here so far, opening pretty much right around settlement. No gap up, which I think, or gap down, which we've been seeing the last few Sundays. So opening pretty much right around where we settled. NQ actually went up and wicked 650s. Interesting. Let's jump over to NQ. I am going to come back to GC and CL. We'll go through some data and news just because I want to see if my data will actually refresh and give me access. If not, no worries. And we will use the screenshots, which, like I said, is just going to be still volume profile with on an hourly time frame, and my moving averages, just a basic 1 hour chart that I use in TradingView that we can at least see the data, talk about it, and, you know, get a perspective on where those two may go. Those two may be still stuck, but we'll see. On NQ, God, what a move. That thing just kept moving last week. Didn't really give me any great chances to, you know, buy it lower once again, like I was trying to do in ES, looking to buy it in like the 800s. We pretty much jumped out of the gate, and I was, like I said, I was in jail for the early parts of the week with my live account, so there wasn't a ton I could do, but it also felt pretty good because I was looking to trade ES and we just didn't move a whole lot. So I don't think I didn't feel like last week was the worst week for me to not be the most active of traders at times, just because there's always better trading weeks. There's always better trading sessions. And given that tight range, I mean, I would have had to hold trades all day to get a real move. So apparently gold spiked up on open. Yeah, it did. CL pretty much right where it was. But on NQ, you had a pretty wide distribution. We burst through 21,100s, which I think was what we were talking about as the important level last week. This was that older time frame point of control from a few weeks that I said was going to act as resistance. And in fact, I said the high was in for 2024, and most likely we were going to fail between 21,200 and 21,100. And boy, was I wrong. I thought we had a chance as we were consolidating here. And I know exactly. I was watching this wick down to 21,000, I think like 21,150s. And I was like, oh, see, there it is. And we're going to now rotate back into that value area and, you know, kiss the all-time high goodbye. But NQ loves to make a liar out of you. So naturally we, you know, had that long wick down and then just were off to the races once again. So looking at where we may go this week, we're at all-time highs. So naturally we can just close our eyes and buy NQ if the semis are continuing to be bid, or if Oracle reports positive earnings this week, as well as Mongo and a few other names. I mean, I could very much see this rally continuing because, like I said, with ES, there's no catalyst to really make me get too bearish outside of just natural rotations that can happen in the week if you get any sort of weakness. So the first place you should be looking to potentially rebid is going to be around Friday's lows, you know, somewhere in this, you know, 450 to even 400s. I would say I would expect you could see buyers stepping in to defend that. You could even see the top end of this consolidation, this point of control down here, right around 515s. Definitely a spot that we could find buyers. If you were to lose that, just like we were saying before, we made this all-time high. It gets a little thin, and with kind of the lower volume that was last week in the indices, if you lose 400s, you're going back to 250s. And I would say that's pretty confident. If we were to lose 400s, I ain't longing this until we get back towards this consolidation zone. You know, probably at the earliest 250s, 260s would be the first place I might try to knife catch it if we were just kind of melting down. But then you just kind of fall back into this higher volume area, and we made it just chop. I mean, look at all this, guys. You guys we always talk about volume profile, and when you see this much in whatever this is, about a 5+ week range, I would expect this to look kind of sloppy, consolidate, chop, and make everybody miserable if we were to fall back into that 250 spot. So tough trade, but like I said, the first place to look for potentially along somewhere around the 450s to 400s. Like if you lose it, back to 250s. And then from there, if you were to somehow lose most of last week's range, we go back into this miserable area between 20,900s down to kind of the 20,600s. And you guys know NQ can fall 800 points like that, given any sort of real selling that we see, even the orderly, kind of stair step down that I think we see at times where, yeah, it looks pretty violent, but it's pretty orderly. It's not, there's people on the bid, they're trying to save it at times, and then you just kind of march down lower each time. So just be aware. I think last week's volume at times was a little thin. So if you lose 400s, maybe don't be the first person to try to long it, would be my advice. I would much rather try to long it if 400s hold, if we're above 450s, much safer. But if we are knifing through it, guys, let it consolidate. Let it start chopping again before you really try a good long. And you may get it. You may get that rotation back up into this range, kind of retesting the breakout from whatever it was, Monday, Tuesday. It was Tuesday. Whatever day we kind of broke through that 250 spot. But I'd much rather long it there potentially to go catch a 100-point trade or so than I am trying to knife catch it somewhere in the threes personally. So yeah, that's my read. I mean, we're at all-time highs. Air horns, air horns, air horns. The air horns are worn out. I made this joke to Coach Jay on Friday that they're a little worn out, and so am I. That's just a lot of air horns, and not really being actively trading it last week. You kind of just laugh, scratch your head, and say, yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, kind of a crazy, wild distribution that we saw last week in the NASDAQ. Yes, a little more just chop and grind to the upside. Gold continuing to move higher. I mean, that's another thing too. I was trying to long gold last week in like the 250s, 240s, 260s multiple times, and I was just unsuccessful. I kept just like exiting out, scratching trades, not really getting a decent move every single time. But I still do like it, and we'll talk about it. But it is kind of stuck in the dead center between moving averages and other things that we'll look at. Let's jump over to to earnings releases this week. I'm going to see if my data actually refreshed. So give me 2 seconds here, guys. I'm going to try. Nope. Okay. So I don't have GC or CL in my live account yet. So maybe tomorrow, no big deal. We'll get that squared away. So we'll use the screenshots. I don't want to slow us down here and get everybody back to their Sunday, but on the earnings front this week, everyone is going to be at watch parties, hanging out at bars, I would imagine, for the biggest earnings release since NVIDIA being GameStop. Totally kidding. But if you were on Twitter, Mr. Roaring Kitty himself did tweet something on, I think, Thursday, and naturally GameStop shut up like 5% or something. I think he bought like a 2-day expiration or 1 day or something, like 32 calls, something just stupid. But like anything else, I just never, I've been making the same comment too. Like, we are just meme stocks squeezing away from this looking very similar to 2021, where we just make new all-time highs. You've got meme coins ripping, you've got rug pulls in Hoagland coin and everything else going on. And it's just like, I need GameStop to shoot to 100 or something so that we can complete the cycle that we're in, I guess. So GameStop reports this week, but obviously not a market mover outside of just the meme itself at this point. The big ones to watch, Oracle and Adobe, and Costco on Thursday are going to be the ones that are potentially market moving. Toll Brothers as well could be interesting for the housing market. But Oracle has actually been performing very, very well. I don't know how how it continues to be the way it is, as they've continued to kind of navigate from being a legacy server company, basically, to actually being a player in the kind of SaaS, software as a service, and the infrastructure space as well. I'm actually impressed with what Ellison's still able to do at 80 plus years old, however old he is now, and still doesn't look it, but good for him. MongoDB, another good player in the infrastructure space, but the big one, like I said, Adobe to watch on Wednesday as well, but still in the kind of the latter half of the earnings season, kind of winding down towards the end of the year, but we still have a couple big players. I know everyone is still waiting to see, does Costco ever raise the price of the $1.50 hot dogs? The CEO continues to indicate that will never happen as long as he's in charge, but we'll see. I always like to tune in for their earnings. I do think they are still going to be a bellwether regardless of what happens in this economic cycle that we're in. I mean, I don't know if you go to Costco, if people do on weekdays, or what I like to do sometimes, which is the best time to go to Costco, I'm not kidding, is going to be Friday nights. Go get a slice of pizza, go get a hot dog. And there's nobody there around, 6, 7 o'clock on a Friday. You go on a Saturday, it's the most miserable experience ever. But for some reason, Friday nights, it's just dead. Great date night. Take your significant other for some pizza and a $1.50 glizzy. Oh, it makes me laugh. But that's pretty much it on the earnings front. Like I said, lighter week. Oracle, GameStop, Adobe, and Costco would be the only ones we're probably really talking about or giving a perspective on this week. So yeah, we'll dive in deeper throughout the week. But I'm actually curious to see how Oracle reports tomorrow more than any of these others. On the economic calendar front, as far as data releases this week, it's pretty light when you take out CPI, PPI. There's no Fed speakers. It's going to be very quiet outside of the kind of the usual couple bond auctions. But Tuesday at 7:30 Central Time, we have the CPI report. It does not move the markets the way it used to. The market just seems to care more about employment data than it does inflation data going forward. So we do have CPI is on Wednesday, not Tuesday. God, I read that wrong earlier. CPI on Wednesday and PPI and jobless claims coming in on Thursday at 7:30. So if you're trading pre-market, just be aware you're going to get stopped out if you probably hold those into the news releases. And then you just have 4-week bill auction, 8-week bill auction. Oh, on Wednesday, if you are trading around lunchtime Central Time, so around noon, you have a 10-year note auction. If you've been paying attention to TopstepTV, we've been talking about the 210 spread, as well as just what is going on in bond land. And it has been interesting, is all I will say. So something to just be aware of is this 10-year note auction at noon Central Time on Wednesday. I personally may want to hope you in a trade when that one's going on, just given the volatility that we've kind of seen in yields as well as just the bonds as a whole. So just be aware that may not be the best time to hold one Wednesday at noon. So, and then Friday, absolutely nothing. You have export and import prices, but nothing that is going to move the markets. So yeah, pretty light week as far as data. The good news is the plethora of Fed speakers last week are, I'm assuming maybe they're back in a blackout period. Yeah, because FOMC is next Wednesday. So that actually makes perfect sense. So yeah, they are back in their blackout period, at least until after next week when we get the rate decision from the Fed. So overall, a quiet week, but do still have the big one being CPI on Wednesday. So just be aware, trade pre-market, just be careful. I'm not a big pre-market trader. Every once in a while I'll take a trade, but not into news releases. I sometimes like to trade the fallout after a news print like those, but that's pretty much it. Let me give this one more try. Nope. Okay. So my data still hasn't come through. So no worries. We will use the screenshots. We're going old school. All right. I know that's really zoomed out. Give me a second here. We'll zoom in so we can actually look at this for GC. Enhance. All right. So what you have here, just be aware, I know this looks a little bit of a mess because it's a screenshot and I didn't get to make it all pretty as we're zooming into this here, but this is gold. So for gold, you have a monthly for November, this longer volume profile here, but looking at last week's range, you have a very balanced D-shaped distribution. And then all we've been doing is basically getting a tighter and tighter range. So the classic Nick Dolby Dorito forming here in GC. So what that means is when we do finally break out of this little wedge that we are currently in, it probably breaks pretty violently either way. So with that, I personally am still looking for longs in gold, but we are also wedged between the 50-day and the 100-day moving average on GC as well. So on the, I guess, bear front, you could see gold potentially fall and sell back down towards the lows of the previous 2 weeks ago's range. So back towards the 2630s, 2625s, 26s would be that 100-day moving average, I believe. I could have these mixed. I think it's the 100-day is down here at 2626. So I could see if you got to sell, that's probably the first place you might find some buyers. And then on the long front, 2700s, naturally big round number, and the 100-day moving average sitting up there. So unfortunately, gold is wedged. So I don't know where it's going to go from here. When you got that tight of a range last week, I kept trying to long it down here in like kind of that 40 to 50 spot. It just wouldn't move. And then I was scratching trades. So the same thing is true here. I know we're kind of breaking out to the upside. No, it actually came back down a little bit. Looks like. I know this is not a live chart, so I took the screenshot before Globex opened. So we are trading slightly higher than this, and this is the 20-day, this little bluish gray line too. But that's how I have my 1 hour chart and trading view. I use the moving averages and some volume profile, but we're, like I said, in a wedge, in a Dorito, as Nick Dolby likes to say. So we kind of have to, play the edges of it in theory. So somewhere down here in the 50s, 40s, same thing, kind of just even basing it off any sort of trend line that you could probably draw back both directions. But longs probably down here in the 40s to 50s to potentially find that breakout to the upside. On the short side, not much higher. I mean, probably in the 60s, 70s, you could see if you wanted to play it to the short side for a breakdown of that wedge. But we're just kind of stuck. I was very optimistic last week looking at this and thinking you could catch a good long in the kind of 40s and potentially go ride it back to 2,700. And we just wouldn't move. So we'll see if volume picks up this week, if we get any sort of break of this consolidation that we've been in. But until then, I'd be playing this. I think we had 2 weeks ago's volume profile here. You have the value area low pretty much around 45. So just like we were talking about last week, kind of the lows of these last couple weeks, even this range here, I would be looking for a safer long. If I see buyers kind of stepping in, I'd like to join along with them because, like I said, I'm still very bullish gold. I really am. But does not mean it's not going to once again go retest these lows from a couple weeks ago. So right now, with us kind of being wedged within these three moving averages, the 20, 50, and 100-day, I would expect more consolidation until you get a more violent move personally. All right. On CL. This thing continues to bug me, and it's still trading. Yeah, Crude is still trading basically right here. So let me zoom in. Let me enhance. Is that better? I think everyone can see that. So we are currently trading at the previous week's lows, basically, and it's a low that we've been talking about for a couple weeks, to be honest. The 67 spot is interesting. I think I said last Sunday I probably wouldn't want to knife catch it again if you were to go retest it. And the logic was the more we were knocking at that like 67 spot, the more I could see is us rotating back towards that old low. And I think it was, oh crap, I think I actually cut off the screenshot now that I think about it. Hang on. Oh, yeah. So I was actually somewhat smart here. I was trying to mark these old consolidation lows as well of like, hey, if 67 broke, where could we go? So these purple lines at 65.70 and 63.70 were kind of those older lows. So I was not an idiot. I did have a plan when I was going to show this screenshot since I couldn't zoom out to that old low. So if you lose 67s, and I know last Sunday I was saying the more we knock on that area, I have no interest in knife catching this, and I could potentially see us rotating down. Those are the consolidation spots that I was kind of seeing. They're not exact, so don't, if this just starts melting through it and it doesn't act as a good bounce spot, don't come yell at me. I'm sorry, guys. I was eyeballing this with a screenshot so that we could visually talk at least about this rough area that I was seeing. And you could pull your chart, zoom out in TopstepX, and you guys can see what I'm talking about, since I couldn't grab that whole thing without making it look terrible to share on a screenshot. I apologize because my data didn't update with the other data packages for my live account, because I had to buy 3 of them, unfortunately, because you're treated as a professional trader. So, and each one is $130 something. So I didn't have them active in MotiveWave and Rhythmic because I really was trading ES and NQ more than anything. But I've been dabbling more and more with gold lately. So I wanted to add them personally so that I could actually be trading gold in my live account a little more. So, but that being said, 67 is going to act as this low all the way down to kind of 66.50s. If you really wanted to knife catch this, like I said, if you continue to see any sort of weakness in CL, you're probably rotating back towards the mid 65s. And if we were to get total Armageddon in CL, back towards the 64s, 63s, 70s type spot. But if we once again just are continuing to kind of be very widely, violently range bound, you long 67s, these low 67s here, because you've had so many weeks of this being kind of those lows, and you're looking for that rotation back into this wider value range and maybe get a trip back towards 68.50s, 68.40s, these value area lows from the last few weeks, kind of that lower section of this value area going back for November as well. Could make perfect sense. Maybe go back towards and tag the 20-day moving average on CL back up here towards 68.70s, 69. Very possible if you were to get once again, another stick save type bounce off 67s. So as always, this is just a violent, stupid mess that is just in a longer time frame downtrend on the 4-hour, but the last few weeks is just chop and misery if you've been trying to catch a breakout one way or the other. I mean, it's just been very, very difficult to time and get a much wider move in CL. So as I said, I have no interest in trading this until it figures out what it wants to do. But yeah, that's kind of the gist. We're at the bottom edge of this longer time frame range from most of November, even going back, I think, into September as well. There was another low down here at 67s. I'd have to double check. But that would be the logic. If you want to play the range, you're longing down here. If not, it could easily melt back down towards 65s, if not lower. So that is the CL trade. Let's see where we're going with ES. NQ still kind of pinging around the highs of Friday. Let's jump back to ES. ES as well. Yeah, same thing. Not really moving so much. Just kind of rejecting off 6,100 so far, or 6,099s, but still early in the overnight session, so who knows what'll happen as Asia wakes up, opens up, and what we may see. So we'll get to some questions here. As I was saying, if you have any, feel free to start throwing them in the chat. We're gonna get to them here in a minute or two. Anything else anyone wants me to go over, talk through, please throw it in the chat. Yeah, I apologize for not having the other data packages ready to go for my live account, so that we could actively show GC and CL, but you guys get the gist. They're both kind of stuck in a range, especially GC. But hopefully that screenshot was sufficient to at least to get you guys a rough idea of where we may go. We'll have to see. So we'll get to some questions. Let's see. Sorry, I'm on the wrong section. All right. Hey, Nick, what settings do you use on the volume profile indicator? So you have two here. You have visible range volume profile here on the right, and then the fixed range. So fixed range, you have to draw on TopstepX I just do the previous week, and then you can adjust it based on your time frame. So my settings are pretty simple. I flip it to ticks so that it looks much more like a readable histogram, more or less. And then I set my rows to 4 for ES. NQ, you could go anywhere between 4 and honestly 16. You may want to use maybe even 20 to go every 5 points on NQ, just given the way it it trades, excuse me. But it's really up to you. I just like to have it almost like a solid line. If you've ever seen my old motive wave charts, like it just is a very color block so that I don't need to see the rows. I kind of just base it off, eyeballing value area highs, value area lows, points of control, etc. So that's kind of the gist. And then you can see my color schemes, but usually I keep everything one color. I just keep them, I do the blue and whites just so you guys can also see what I'm talking about as far as value area highs and lows and stuff. So those are my settings. Feel free to customize as you see fit. I keep my value area at the standard 70%, but feel free to play around with it as you see fit. Yeah. Is this the March contract for NQ? No, we are still working on Z. I won't I won't roll my contracts and charts until volume has flipped. Usually will happen somewhere between the Friday before rollover, sometimes even Thursday. Sometimes it doesn't happen until the following Sunday where you finally see that volume has flipped. But a good rule of thumb is on roll week, I wait until Sunday, the following Sunday for rolling my charts. Cause I mean, at least this year it's been pretty standard that by Friday, you usually see the volume has flipped. It's still pretty split. So roll weeks can also be pretty miserable to trade at times. It's a little jumpy. It gets a little wonky with just the way the contracts move as people are rolling. But I haven't even checked the March contract to see where it's trading, to be honest. I need to probably do that this week. It probably is a little weird. I'm actually curious how some positions may roll, may not roll to the next contract. I don't know. That's above my pay grade of doing that stuff institution wise and how they do it and how large some of those positions are at times, but we'll have to see. But yeah, usually you wait until volume has flipped to the March contract before rolling, and it hasn't yet. So no interest in rolling it from Z just yet. Nick, do you find it beneficial to trade NQ and ES at the same time? I usually don't, but I have in the past. As far as like day trades, like on my Topstep Live account, I don't trade them both because obviously Friday was a little weird. They were not exactly correlated at times. The way that we are used to between ES and NQ, there was that weird diversion, whatever you want to call it at this point, between the two indexes. So on a swing time frame, I will do it, but I'm also swinging usually with micros in my personal account, and I could be doing a couple ES, micros and swinging it on a longer time frame to catch a wider move. I have not been swinging much this year as far as those type of trades, but that would be the way to do it. It's just going to be hard to. I guess it depends on how you're looking at it, but I don't trade both at the same time because they usually move in tandem. So you're kind of almost like doubling the position in a weird way, unless you are using the hedging mechanism of micros versus minis in some capacity where it's like, oh, I'm short one ES and I'm going to eventually long like 10 NQ micros and start covering certain ways. Like there's ways to do it, but it's not something that I actively do, but I have used been short ES micros and still longing NQ in a completely different time frame, like looking to hold ES during a larger down rotation, but then I'm still intraday day trading NQ regardless of what direction I think on a weekly, monthly time frame we may be headed. So it just really depends. I don't think it's beneficial if you're day trading and your time horizon is open to close. I don't think there's a big benefit because they usually are correlated and moving in similar directions and similar, rotations and moves. So it depends. What time does the Asia market open? So you have like Australia that opens a little bit earlier, usually, or I think around 6 p.m. Central. You get the kind of that first market open, and then Asia will open between 7 and 8. You've got the different areas. Like the Nikkei, I believe, opens at 8, 7. Now I'm blanking. I don't give you the wrong information. So it's like that. There's like a 6, 7 p.m. and then 8 p.m. block where different markets in Asia will start to open. You have Japan, you've got China, you have Australia. Sorry, my brain is trying to keep moving here. So it just really depends. But basically that 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. block is when Asia pretty much opens. Do you check the Nikkei? I don't, because I have no idea how to trade it. The king of trading the Nikkei is going to be Mr. Slow Markets himself, Coach Dakota. So if you want to get a good pulse check on the Nikkei and potentially see a trade, he's the man to watch at 7:30 Central. That is when, the Nikkei is a little more active, or his show is on at 7:30. So he may find a good overnight Nikkei trade then. So he will give you a good perspective. I told him I tried to trade it once and I was terrified because the spread was ridiculous. I had no idea what I was doing and I had no levels marked. I had never really watched it move outside of his trades. So, that's where as you watch things more and you get more comfortable, you have an understanding the spread, the way it moves, the way it trades, feel free to, take a shot at an Nikkei trade. But I said this with gold before, where it's like, I really don't watch it a ton and it wasn't actively trading. It was just kind of, balancing and things like that. And then once we broke out from 2,500, I started really watching it more, and I have more confidence now taking trades and building levels and building, a perspective that I've done over the last few months to give me confidence. Now, if I did that with the Nikkei and I was up at night actively watching it trade live or doing replays or whatever, then I'd be more confident taking trades. But I don't, because I don't really trade the overnight session. It's a time that I really don't want to be staring at charts personally, because I'm usually staring at them most of throughout the New York session as it is. So I don't feel the need to then go watch the Asia markets as much, because, I'm trading the US markets and it's almost like it's too much. I need breaks. That's the way I look at it. All right. So, are there any other questions that anyone wants me to go over? I will pause for a minute or so while we see. And I'm going to do one last refresh of my data. Let's see. Sad. Nope. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe when everyone's back at their desk. So no worries. We use the screenshots. So if that's the last question, then we will recap. Yes. And I will let everybody go. How about that? But like I said, if you've got some other question, throw it in the chat. I will go over it. But looking at this week, as we said, we've been marching higher, marching to new all-time highs, marching to another lovely one of these. And nothing has changed. We are in, for lack of a better word, holiday trading. So we may continue just to drift a bit higher, continue to make new all-time highs, and we'll see what that shakes out. But for the time being, I am looking to potentially get long somewhere between the 60s and 50s in ES. I'm going to be trading ES a little more this week. I don't really want to ride the hurricane that has been NQ lately. I'm trying to catch a wider move at times, and I just feel a little safer this week. With lower volume, I'd rather just see if I can catch a decent ES trade. So somewhere between the 60s and 50s would be the great spot to potentially try a long. But I could also see buyers trying to defend somewhere between this low volume edge here. And, we didn't have a ton of volume here last week. this kind of 80s to 70 type spot on ES. So I could see potentially if we were to lose this low from Friday, is that Friday? Maybe it's Thursday. No, that was Friday. So that Friday low, if you were to lose it, I could see buyers stepping in around 70 to potentially rebid there. If you were to get a sell and this level didn't hold here at the 60s, we're probably going to rotate back towards SPX 6000, which will be somewhere between kind of that 610 to 6000 spot as we get closer to contract roll. And it is a, larger consolidation range from a few weeks. So I could see, if you got weakness, that's probably where we're going. Next week's OPEX week as well, and FOMC. And yeah, so I could see that happening next week. I just don't expect a lot out of this week outside what we've been doing, which is just kind of drift higher. I haven't seen the volume give me confidence that this is going to be a very wide range of a trading week, but we'll see. The market loves to make a liar out of me specifically, so we will have to see. Yeah, so that's kind of the prep. That's kind of the idea with ES. We're trading at all-time highs as always. If you wanted to close your eyes and buy it, it's worked so many times. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I could see it continuing to work, but not my style personally. And I've been wrong all year about it. So I'm looking to buy it a little lower, but if we blast off 680s, 690s, and I don't catch the move, I'll scalp it as I usually do. I don't need to catch the widest move. Me scalping ES 5 to 10 points is fine with me. NQ somewhere between 10 and 30 is pretty much what I do every day. So I don't really care about the direction. If I can't catch the big move, so be it. But I don't want to long the all-time high again. Eventually it's going to work. It worked in July. It's eventually going to actually have a decent pullback that I can once again long there. So we'll have to see. But that's kind of the issue. Nick, are you having issues with Topstep X? I'm not, guys, but I'm on the live account. So I don't know if there is anything going on with the sim environment, but I'm not having any issues. Data's coming through. I have full, level 2 data. So I'm not experiencing anything. I just don't have access to the COMEX data for, GC and CL, but we'll get that fixed. But I'm not experiencing any latency or any issues on my front. But like I said, this is the live brokerage. Nick, do you trade with other prop futures firms? If so, what setup do you use for multiple props? Guys, I really am actively trading with my personal accounts in Topstep right now. I haven't been focusing as much on anything else for the last, I don't know, however long, pretty much all summer at this point. Be careful who you use, what you're doing. As you guys know, Topstep's been around forever, and there's been a lot of garbage firms popping up out of the woodwork. So if you're doing it, be careful, go in slow. If you're trading with us, if you're watching the show, you're at, in my opinion, the best one in the industry. So just be careful where you are, allocating money to continue that kind of sim environment with all the other firms that are out there in the space. In my experience, Topstep is the best. I've never had issues ever getting paid from Topstep, getting payouts. I don't have any concerns about their liquidity or anything else going on with them. And pretty much everybody else in the industry, I take with a grain of salt. But if you are using multiple, be careful is all I will say. I think it can get a little distracting. I think it can take away from trading well, unless you are copying all of them, but then you're creating a ton of leverage. And if you're wrong in a lot of firms and a lot of money. So just be smart if that's what you're doing. In my opinion, when I had done it in the past way long ago, it's a distraction. And then you're kind of like, you're long in some, you're trying to shorten others, and it just is a big mess. I've found I am much better when I am laser focused on my personal or one or two accounts and just kind of, rolling from there. Cause you guys know I trade my personal, I trade a little options. I do other things. So I can't trade 800 different accounts and it's hard enough to be right once in a day trading futures, let alone trying to do it across multiple firms. And when you kind of reaffirm that focus to focusing on one account, one strategy, one good setup a day, you will have success. When you try to replicate that throughout the session, throughout the day, multiple firms, multiple accounts, it's a setup for failure because you're not necessarily then taking A+ setups. So my advice is, focus on one. And if you're watching this show, you probably are with the right firm. So that would be my guidance and my advice. All right. So any other questions, guys? If not, I will let everybody get back to their Sunday. Guys, if there are issues with Topstep X, you guys know Topstep always makes it right. So if there is an active issue with data or anything flowing, they always take care of us as traders. So don't be too worried. Hopefully it is not any sort of issue that's causing anyone some pain. But my advice, if there is issues, if you're experiencing it, guys, just hold off on trading. Let the data kind of refresh or get fixed. I would stop if you are not actively in a trade. If things are not functioning well, it's usually a good time to be hands off for a little bit until things kind of resolve. But as always, they always make it right. They always fix the issues if there are some going on. So no concerns. Just my advice would be stop if you are actually seeing things not loading, things not refreshing, data not cycling, whatever it is. Just be careful, guys. As I said, weekly pivot down towards the 60-60s, 60-50s. That would be where I'm looking to potentially, find a rebid, but we'll see what happens. I don't think there's no sellers on the tape. I didn't see any sellers on the tape last week, really, with any sort of aggression. I mean, the largest rotation to the downside was all 20 points in ES. So there is no sellers left. There's no bears left. The bears have been taken out, and I'd be shocked to see them come out. We'll see what happens with CPI, but it's all steam ahead for air horns and most likely a new all-time high this week. We'll see if we can finally take out 6100 SPX and move to the top side. Oh, I completely forgot. I was wondering why we were a few minutes short when I was doing the exact same stuff. Gamma, let's talk about this real quick before we get out of here. As we were talking about last week, still very, very, very skewed to the north side on the net gamma. So 6100 SPX going to be a very large strike, but something to keep in mind when you take into account kind of the gross, so total going for total calls and puts. Look at the big elephant in the room at 6,000 still. So I don't necessarily know if it's going to happen this week with CPI, but with FOMC next week, if we don't see this shrink on the put side and even the call side down towards 6,000 SPX, I would not be shocked to see us come down and at least ping it once and then maybe start building higher volume off of that. So that's 100 points lower, roughly 110, maybe a little less than that, 105. Like I said, I don't think we may get there this week, but that may act as a magnet until we see this kind of shrink. So just be aware as we are trading this week that if you got a good flush, that could be an obvious target if you got any sort of real downside. But given option expiration next week, given FOMC next week, this downside is probably a little bit of hedging, maybe some other things, but the market loves the just-in-time hedge, so I don't put too much weight into that. But it's the glaring largest strike still at 6,000. And with OPEX next week, it makes more sense that we could eventually still go ping it at least one more time before kind of continuing this march of a Santa Claus rally. And, 100 points isn't that much in ES. I know we've kind of been drifting higher, but it very much could still correct and come back down and at least tag it once. So just be aware of that list this week. If you lose kind of this, like I said, that 60-60 spot, I would not be shocked to see us come back down towards 6,000. So that's the prep. That's all I got. I hope everyone has had a wonderful weekend. Yeah, let's go attack this trading week. I'm excited to be in my Topstep X live account and actively trading with y'all again. Yeah, that's the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you need more Topstep TV, feel free to tune in to Coach Dakota's show going on in about 90 minutes here on Topstep TV on YouTube. Everyone have a great rest of your Sunday evening. Trade smart, trade safe, have some fun this week. I will be active in the Topstep TV chat, most likely. Not quite back on fast markets yet. We're still transitioning me slowly back with more shows as I'm getting comfortable being a dad. So hopefully you guys see a little more of me soon. If not, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see y'all this week. Thanks, guys.